Across the Fence, an important and urgent message about trees, firewood, and invasive insects. Vermont foresters are launching this tree tagging campaign and expanding a firewood quarantine. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. This is Firewood Awareness Week. The goal is to raise awareness about the risks and dangers of moving firewood. Even if you think you know about the dangers, you're going to want to hear from the experts that we have this afternoon. To start our program, I'm joined by Molly Klepak. Molly is the Forest Pest Outreach Coordinator with UVM Extension. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
What is Fire Awareness Week and why is it so important?
Yeah, so Firewood Awareness Week is a collaborative effort that UVM Extension, Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, USDA APHIS, and Green Mountain Forests, National Forest, have all collectively been working on together to draw attention to the really critical role that firewood plays in the rapid spread of invasive pests. Invasive tree pests like the emerald ash borer, the Asian longhorn beetle, they actually spend about half of their life cycle as little tiny larvae that live inside of the wood of the tree. And so it's actually, when you cut down a tree and make it into firewood, it's surprisingly easy to miss that there might be a forest pest living in that firewood. And so people could move pests around the country by transporting firewood. And so we are hosting this Awareness Week to draw attention to the importance of buying locally sourced firewood so that we stop giving these pests a free ride.
So what's going to be happening during the week?
So during the week, we're going to really focus on two types of locations that are heavily visited by people who may be transporting firewood, and locations that might be one of the places that would be first infested. And those are rest areas and campgrounds. And so on May 22nd, we're going to be hosting 4 rest area blitzes throughout the state. And so May 22nd is the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, which is the traditional start of camping in Vermont. And so we're going to be catching people who will be traveling into the state to go camping at our wonderful campgrounds. And so state staff and volunteers will be at these blitzes to give people information about how and why to buy local firewood, do activities, and draw attention to this really important issue. We'll also be presenting tree tagging displays at all the rest areas and 14 state and federal campgrounds around Vermont. And these tree tagging displays are designed to create a graphic representation of what kind of an impact these tree pests could have. A lot of people don't actually know how to identify different types of trees, how to tell an ash from a sugar maple, and so when you tell them about the impact these pests could have, it's hard for them to conceptualize. And so these tree tagging events are designed to create a representation of what could be lost if these pests became established in our state. And so we'll be putting them up at all the rest areas and the campgrounds so people can really realize the extent of the impact and be motivated to buy and burn only locally sourced firewood.
So as people travel around Vermont, they're going to be seeing campgrounds and rest areas that have their trees marked. And Across the Fence's Keith Silva spoke with forestry officials during a recent tree tagging in Williston.
We are starting a tree tagging campaign. It's leading up to a Firewood Awareness Week that a whole bunch of partners are running together. It's a group of different agencies and organizations who have the common goal of trying to protect our forests, primarily trying to bring awareness to people about the risks of moving firewood from long distances to your area.
Why did you choose rest areas to get the word out about this program?
Well, we consider rest areas a prime area to actively look for invasive insects, primarily because you have truckers driving long distances, people from out of state coming just to check out Vermont. And they might be bringing in firewood. Truckers might be carrying in saw logs or firewood themselves, and if they sit here, pull over, have a nap, it gives the insects a prime opportunity to go out and check out the environment that we're in right here, and we'd rather not have that happen.
You're also doing this at campgrounds as well.
Yeah, we're definitely doing it at a whole bunch of state parks, and the U.S. Forest Service is involved, and we'll be doing it on National Forest. So you'll be seeing them hopefully in a bunch of places, especially visitors from out of states. If they stop in at any of these locations, that it'll be one consistent message that hopefully makes an impact.
Why do you need to get the word out about these pests?
We're concerned about specifically the emerald ash borer and Asian longhorn beetle. Those are the two pests of concern that we're targeting in this campaign. Both of the insects have caused millions and millions of dollars of damage throughout the United States. Specifically, emerald ash borer is on all four sides of us in Vermont, and we haven't found it yet here in Vermont, but firewood is a prime vector which allows insects to hitchhike into the state if people aren't careful. And without human-aided movement, they would be a lot slower. Unfortunately, people, not maliciously, but they might bring in these pests through movement of wood products like firewood.
You should not bring wood in from outside of the local area. We want you to utilize local wood for your recreation purposes. There's plenty of wood in the local area, and in many of the campgrounds, particularly on the National Forest, we allow you to cut your own wood from dead and dying trees that are on the ground that you can utilize in the campground area. That will eliminate the risk of pests coming into the area and protect the forests so that the resources are there for yourself and in the future for your family.
And if someone does bring in wood from another state?
If someone does bring in wood from another state, they need to notify an official immediately, whether it be a campground host, someone from the state, or the National Forest themselves, so that we can take proper procedure to dispose of the wood properly so that any pests that may be in that wood are contained immediately, and that we know that there may have been a risk in that area of the National Forest so that we can monitor in the future.
Well, our thanks for John Sinclair and Emily Inouye. If you're just joining us, we're highlighting the importance of Firewood Awareness Week. In addition to Molly Klepak of UVM Extension, I'm joined now by Barbara Schultz. Barbara is a Forest Health Program Manager for the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, what rules or recommendations are there currently regarding firewood use in our state parks and federal forests?
Well, let's start with just the recommendations, and these are recommendations for everybody. Just burn local wood. Don't move firewood. And by local, we mean within 25 miles is best, within 50 miles is certainly the maximum. Just burn what's local. Then there are some rules already for all of us. The states around us have some quarantines. We can't bring untreated firewood from Canada to Vermont. So those are some rules that apply to all of us. On our state parks and campgrounds, we've made the rules a little more clear. It's don't bring firewood from out of state. And that's both the Green Mountain National Forest, as Molly already mentioned, and the state forests and parks. So we ask people not to bring firewood from out of state.
And again, the purpose of a firewood quarantine is what?
To protect our forests. Vermont is 78% forested, and our forests are very important to us for many reasons. And what a quarantine does is prevent the non-native pests, the insects and diseases that weren't in Vermont to begin with, from moving into Vermont. It can either stop them altogether, which would be our goal, and sometimes our goal is merely to slow the spread. And so to protect our forests, we're asking people not to bring firewood from out of state, and particularly untreated firewood from out of state, which is one that may still harbor live insects and diseases when they get here to Vermont.
Now, we saw a couple of invasive insect pictures in that video that we just saw, but remind us, what pests are we worried about?
Well, one that's really of concern to Vermonters is Asian longhorn beetle. Now, that's a beetle that's from China, and it occurs within 50 miles from Vermont in Massachusetts, as well as some locations in New York, a little bit in Ohio. And Asian longhorn beetle loves maple trees. In fact, about 40% of the trees in Vermont are species that are eaten by the Asian longhorn beetle. So this is one that's a real concern to us. If you have a sugar maker in your town, you know how much concern it must be to them to have the Asian longhorn beetle. And so that's one that we're really trying to keep out, and it's known to move within firewood.
And now, is there firewood that's deemed safe to move?
Yes, so treated firewood is safe to move. And firewood to be treated isn't just kiln dried, or isn't just wood that's been seasoned, been sitting out for a while. It's wood that's actually been into a heat treatment facility that's been certified by a government agency.
I think we have some examples of what this would look like.
So when you buy it, it doesn't just say heat treated. We're looking for certified, insect-free. So it's heat treated to a standard that they know kills not just anything that's sitting on the surface. It doesn't just make it dry enough to burn, but it's actually dry enough to kill any of the insects or diseases that are inside the wood.
And so what recommendations to visitors do you have who are going to be camping in Vermont?
So just assume that there's going to be firewood here in Vermont. Like I mentioned, we are 78% forested. So where you go camping in Vermont, you're going to find firewood. It's going to be here. And there's no place you're going to go that doesn't have trees. So call the campground ahead of time. Do they have firewood available? Do they know of a place nearby where you can purchase firewood? Just assume that you're going to be able to get firewood. And that works both ways. So also when we're visiting our other states, we want to be sure to also not bring our wood there.
Now, you brought some examples of why it's almost impossible to tell if your wood is clean.
Right. So a lot of times firewood will look great from the outside. Well, let me just show you a piece of firewood from my wood pile first.
Okay.
I brought this here, and this piece of wood looked just super when
terrific.
Just a piece of ash wood that looked perfectly clean. But I peeled off the surface of the bark, and I could see that there's eastern ash bark beetle underneath. Now that's not a problem here because that's a native insect, and our ash trees are used to it. But if that was emerald ash borer, that would be a problem, and you also wouldn't be able to see it from the outside because it bores under the bark.
Right. And who wants to pick every piece of wood apart?
Yeah, see, you just can't see them, and it's even more problematic with some of the diseases that we have, which are microscopic. So you couldn't possibly see them with your naked eye. And just to show you, this piece of wood is infested with the Asian longhorn beetle. And again, from the outside of the bark, you can't tell much unless you happen to see this hole. But on the inside, it's riddled with holes. So if you didn't see what was going on inside that wood, you wouldn't know that you were transporting firewood. And that's why it's so easy for these insects to move inside of firewood.
And I think Molly mentioned that earlier, is that the early life cycle of some of these creatures, they're in the wood for a long time.
Exactly. And so so we have quarantines on insects, but it takes quite a while for us to detect these insects, sometimes years, sometimes decades. And even though the quarantine's in place, if we haven't seen it yet, that firewood is not covered by the emerald ash borer or the Asian longhorn beetle quarantine.
Now, why won't the quarantine rules include logs going to sawmills and other wood products?
It's true that one can transport insects and diseases by saw logs, but firewood is a lot more risky. And one of the reasons is because people tend to use the higher quality trees for saw logs, the healthy trees, the ones that are in great condition.
Right.
But firewood tends to be the trees that are already dying, the ones in your yard that died, you don't know why, but you cut it up and put it into the wood pile. And if you don't know why, and that happened to have been, the cause happened to have been a non-native insect or disease, that's when it's really easy to move these pests around.
So what should you do if you find out that, oh my gosh, I've brought this wood with me camping?
Well, the most important thing is not to spread it any further and to contain it. So the important thing is just not to leave that wood on site. Certainly tell somebody, let somebody know that there may be a risk. Burn it right away. So if you brought the wood to burn at the campsite, burn it.
Have a nice big bonfire.
So we don't want to leave it there for the next person. If you brought wood from far away, don't leave it as a good gesture to the person that's coming next, because that could be the worst thing, that it could be in the woods for a long time.
And so, Molly, what is UVM Extension's role regarding forest pests and invasives?
Yeah, well, last fall they hired my position, which is the Forest Pest Outreach Coordinator, and through that, Extension became involved in disseminating the research, best management practices, and information about forest pests to key interest groups and also the general public. And so my position works really closely with Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, the Agency of Agriculture, APHIS, and other partners to effectively give outreach around invasive forest pests. So we do things like Awareness Week, but we also give workshops to town planners, road crews, people who are going to really deal with the decision making of if these pests arrive. And also disseminating information to the general public, tabling at large events like the Vermont Sugar Maple Festival, the Flower Show, and giving the information to the public.
Now, if viewers want some more information about this, what should they do? Is there a website they can check out? Yeah,
they should go to vtinvasives.org. That's our clearinghouse of all information about invasives, and it'll be full of firewood quarantine and firewood general information for the next month or so. All
right, well, terrific. Well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.